Hi, this is Anthony Hamilton. I'm the author of Mind, Time, and Power, which is a book about using the power of your mind to transform your life, to heal your past, transform your present, and create more of the future that you want. So I've been doing this work now for about 45 years, and I've learned a lot of things over that length of time. And what I've been working on recently is an insight that is blowing my mind. It's like a fast track to the life that you want, literally. And it's very simple. It's a technique that I've improved and devised over the last few years, and it works like magic. But at the same time, it's subtle. It's disarmingly subtle because what we're talking about is feelings. And what I've discovered is that most people are not very aware of their feelings, and they certainly don't have a easy way and a quick way of changing their feelings, changing their state, changing how they feel. And that's what I have been teaching people recently with this technique that I'm going to be talking about in this video. Now, this video, and there's actually two videos in this series. The first one, I'm talking with a fellow named Michael, who is a friend of mine, and he's been a part of my online coaching group for a couple of years now. The second one is Greg, and Greg has been a part of this online coaching group of mine for going on 4 years now. They're both great fans of my work. They love my book. They've read my book. They've studied my book. And yet, at the same time, they are experiencing what I experienced when I first came across this idea of changing your state and looking at the world in a completely different way, which happens automatically because when you change your state, the world literally changes. It looks different to you. Your perception is different. For example, if you're happy, if you're in love, you just met a new girlfriend, a new boyfriend, and you're feeling like on top of the world, then everything is great, right? Nothing is a problem anymore because you're in such a good state. Likewise, when you're angry or upset or depressed or feeling low, well, you look at the same world and it's miserable, right? So, this idea of being able to feel the state that you choose to feel happy when you choose to feel happy, this is probably one of the most important things that you can learn. And it's something that the mystics and the mystery schools and the psychologists and the scientists in the present day have been researching and working on for hundreds and even thousands of years. And yet people still don't quite get the message. And you'll see as I'm talking in these two videos, this one today with Greg and the previous one, which I'll give you a link to in the description, where I'm explaining the same thing to Michael. Each of them is having trouble understanding what I'm talking about because I'm talking about feelings. I'm talking about feeling good, feeling comfortable, feeling happy. And of course, everybody wants to feel happy, but we misunderstand the way our mind works. We think that we'll be happy if the right thing comes along and makes us feel happy. Well, that's a big illusion. You've heard this before, right? Life is an illusion. I mean, that's nothing new. People have been talking about that for literally thousands of years. So the big illusion is that we feel the way we feel because of what happens. Somebody is good to us, we feel good. Somebody smiles at us, we feel happy. Somebody gives us the finger, we feel upset. And we think this is normal. And it is normal. But it's not necessary. We can feel loved even when we're by ourselves. We can feel happy when there's apparently nothing in our life to be happy about. We can still feel happy. We can feel blessed when we're living in a tent, you know? So our feelings are really something that we can learn to control. And that's what this video is about. And that's what my work is about these days, is teaching people the simple technique of feeling better about their life. So watch this video, watch it a couple of times and see what I'm saying. I'm trying to be as clear as possible with my explanation. And Greg is trying as hard as he can to understand it, and Michael is trying as well to understand it. And they both get it. They both get the message. But as you'll see, especially with Greg talking about trying to feel happy and having trouble feeling it, he has happy thoughts. He has happy memories. He has lots of things in his life that are happy thoughts, happy experiences. But to actually feel happy, that's a little tricky, as you will see. This is something I've been working on literally for 45 years. When I first noticed that I had forgotten to feel good, I had forgotten how to feel good. And for a long time, I was looking for a reason to feel happy, until I finally realized you can feel happy for no reason. You just have to know how to do it. It's a learning process. The same as learning to play a musical instrument is a process. And you get better at it each time you do it. If you want a free copy of my book, Mind, Time, and Power, you can get one if you just pay for the shipping at www.mindtimeandpower.com. Bye for now.
So a lot of it is, being able to think differently. That one video that you sent over was really helpful. Where, you and Michael were talking a couple weeks ago. It was kind of the icing on the cake, I guess, so to speak, was that you were talking about how to change a mood, how to change a state that you're in. And just to, kind of map it out, because I did that with one of the things that happened with cognitive behavioral therapy is I would see that I would, start at, maybe I was emotionally at a 3, and I would do the refutation of some of my thoughts, and I'd come out a 7. And you do that about 50 times or 100 times, writing them out longhand. You start saying, the hell with that, I'm just going to go be happy. Because I know the end result is there. So it's a lot of work to write out 100 sentences, 3 times. I'm thinking this, I could think about it this way. Here's a couple of examples. And now how do I feel? I feel better. I mean, if you've got any brain power, at a certain point, you're like, this is wasting a lot of my time. So when I think about, I'm not tall enough or something like that, you say, well, there's a different way to think about it. I'm taller than the average man. Okay, well, da-da-da. You go through this whole mental gyration, or just kick it to the curb. And if you want, you could think about it, and you'll know an answer will come to you. But it's really kind of a waste of time. It's a bit slow.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's good that you bring this up, because I wanted to talk to you about this. In that call that you just talked about, the one with Michael, right? I was explaining this idea of feeling, right? Feeling good, putting yourself in a state where you feel good. And then while you're feeling good, think about something that was bothering you before, right? Or something that may have bothered you for years. I mean, who knows? It could be anything, right? But the thing is to bring that feeling together with the thought of whatever it was, the negative thing, right?
Right.
And so when you do that, what happens is that your explainer figures out a way logically that it makes sense to feel this way when thinking about that thing.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe for 20 years before, every time you thought about that thing, you felt a totally different way. You felt ripped off or cheated or angry or frustrated or whatever it might be. So that that bundle of nerves, that sort of, neural connection between the event and your feelings about it seems so real and seems so logical, and maybe it seems like the truth because you've had those two things all the time, the feeling, about it and the event, that you have so many nerves, so many explanations and thoughts and verbal gyrations about why it makes perfect sense to feel that way, that at first it doesn't make any sense to try and feel differently about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very difficult. People say, well, just let it go. Well, you can't let it go because it's, for whatever reason, right? So this explainer idea, the explainer ties together apparently the left brain and the right brain, right? And the right brain is the pattern recognition part. So a feeling is a pattern, a state is a pattern. That's how I look at it. And and the left brain uses words and logic, right? It's digital. So we're so used to noticing what we think. I mean, we virtually always have this voice in our head, right?
Right.
But what that voice is, as far as I understand it now, that's the explainer. That's your logical explanation for why it makes sense to feel the way you do. Well, if you hijack that and you just simply feel differently, you feel blessed or you feel lucky, let's say, right? You feel lucky about it.
Right.
Then when you feel lucky and you're good at feeling lucky because you practiced it and you can get that feeling of feeling lucky, then you think about that thing. And at first your brain goes, that's crazy. That's not, there's nothing lucky about that. But if you just hold it there, if you try it again, if you have a recording, like, feeling proud, for example, and so you're used to think, you get the proud feeling and you're feeling proud about it, or you're feeling lucky, let's say lucky, then, you eventually, and by eventually, I mean, it might take a few seconds, it might take a few minutes, or it might take a few days of thinking about it. But eventually what will happen is your two brains together will go, well, actually, it could have been a lot worse than that. So that's a reason to feel lucky. It wasn't worse. Yeah, you broke your leg, you lost your job, but you could have broken two legs. You could have died.
Right.
So actually, you're lucky that you didn't die and didn't lose your leg. Sure, you're in a cast for a while. You have a bit of a limp now, but you could have lost your leg, right? So that that's actually lucky. It could have been worse, right?
Right.
So what happens is your brain eventually will figure out a logical explanation for why it's appropriate to feel lucky when you're thinking of that thing. Well, when you think of that traumatic event and you feel lucky about it, which you will over time with neuroplasticity, then that's a total shift, right? That's a different way of looking at not just the trauma, but looking at your life. But it's so tricky because a lot of us don't know how to feel. We don't have a variety of feelings that we can access. Like what I realized in 1979 was I didn't know how to feel good. If I listed the feelings that I felt, generally speaking, in the course of the day, I felt angry, frustrated, separate, unloved, misunderstood, confused. That's what I felt. And I felt all those things all the time. So that was my state, right? And so when I started to learn how to feel good, I started feeling, and I explained some of these before in some of these calls, how to feel loved, how to feel lucky, how to feel happy, how to feel, at peace. that sort of thing. And so systematically over time, now I have quite a repertoire of, like I have a palette, like a color palette of, 10 or 15 or 20 or 30 different positive feelings that that I can feel when I choose to. Well, I think that's unusual. I've never heard anybody else talk like this about feelings. I'm sure there must be people that do talk about it, but I haven't come across any. There are a few books that talk about feelings.
Smile therapy comes to mind. You hear smile therapy?
Yeah, that could be one. There was a guy that wrote a book called Feeling Good, I think years ago. I never read his book. I should probably read it. But at any rate, so this idea of using your feelings as a thing, as a vibration. You can call it a vibration. That's what people often call it, right? Oh, it's a different vibration, And so when I was explaining it to you the other day, like you came in at the end of that conversation with Michael and I, and you were talking about, because I was looking at it yesterday. And
I have that book on my shelf, by the way, Feeling Good. I was just looking to see.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll have to.
Burns. It's by Burns.
That's right. Yeah, Burns. Yeah, I'm going to have a look and see if, maybe read that book. Because he may talk about this too. I don't know. But at any rate, and you said, well, it's the swish. You were talking about you were talking about NLP and how this NLP technique where you ask yourself, okay, think about something that's negative in your life and where do you see it in your mind, and then think about something that is positive and where do you see that in your mind, and move the one over to the other place, that kind of a thing. You remember that?
Yep.
And so I wonder if you realized, or if you realize now, maybe you do, I don't know, maybe it would remind you if you saw that part of the video again, but that I was talking about a completely different thing. Like I was talking about feeling, and you were talking about seeing. Well, both of those could fall under the umbrella of thinking, right? If I could say, what do you think?
Right.
You might say, well, I'm thinking about, I got a presentation next week and I'm a little bit tense about it. I'm a little bit, I got to finish. I got to write this presentation. So that's what I'm thinking. Well, I guess that's true. I mean, that's what we normally mean by thinking, right? Some of them are images, some of them are thoughts, some of them are words, some of them are concepts, some of them are emotions and feelings. We sort of all call those things thoughts. That's
right.
That's thinking. As a matter of fact, during this Gabor Mate workshop that I was listening to the other day, this lady was saying to him, I feel, because they had a Q&A at the end, right? And one of the people asked a question, something like, I feel like my life is going nowhere, right? And Gabor said, you have to understand, that's not a feeling. A feeling is angry, frustrated. I'm not sure what he said. Three or four, feeling hungry, angry. He said that's not a feeling. That's a belief, right? Now I believe he's wrong. I should talk to him about this. Actually, he lives in Vancouver. And I know people who know him. I mean, Michael knows him, right? So I could probably have a conversation with him. But here's the thing that I discovered. Because people used to tell me in the past, I would talk in these terms, and I remember this 25 years ago, because I belonged to this men's group, right? And I would say things like, I feel like I'm trapped. And people would say, that's not a feeling, that's a belief. And I'd say, I feel it. And they'd say, no, that's a belief. You have to change that belief.
Right.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, I was right and they were wrong, right? Or maybe right and wrong is not the right way to describe it. But I believe and I believe it more now than I ever did, that if you say something like, I feel like my life is going down the drain, and somebody says, no, that's not a feeling, that's a belief. Bullshit. It's a feeling. You can feel it, right? And the best description of a belief that I ever heard, and one that I use a lot, is one that I learned from Anthony Robbins. He said, a belief is a feeling of certainty about the meaning of something. Well, that's completely brilliant to me, because what it does is it says a belief is a feeling about meaning. Now,
Right.
you could say the meaning is a belief. So if somebody says, oh, when you say you feel like your life is going down the tube, I say that's a belief. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about you believe your life is going down the tube. Right? But
Right.
I would say, okay, but I experience it as a feeling. And the feeling, according to Anthony Robbins, is a feeling of certainty. Now, that is brilliant. I love that, because certainty is something that you can measure. Like if I say on a scale of 1 to 10, how certain are you that your life is going down the tube? Well, you could say 10, or you could say 3 or 4 or 6 or 8,
Right.
In other words, part of me feels like my life's going down the tube, and part of me feels like maybe it's not so bad. You know what I mean? So this idea
Right.
that you can actually judge the feeling or the belief on that scale of certainty, right? Certainty is a feeling that, like if I asked you, can you spell your name? How certain are you that you could spell your name? I have no doubt you'd say 100%.
Right.
Right? But if I said to you, how certain are you that you could recognize your name if it was written in Russian or, some Cyrillic alphabet, you might say, oh, gee, I don't know, maybe 2 out of 10. I'm not sure what it looks like if it was written in, the Russian alphabet, right? Or if there was a name like Gregor or something. I guess there's a Gregor,
Right.
In Russian, right? Pope Gregory, how does Gregory,
Right.
what does Gregory look like when it's written in Russian? You might not recognize it, right? Because it's got that funny, the funny alphabet. So you might go, oh,
Right.
I'm not certain I could recognize it, right? So there's a difference there. So that's why I love that definition of Anthony Robbins, because to me, it's perfectly valid to say, I feel like my life's going down the drain, or I feel like I'm beating a dead horse, which is what one woman said to me a few weeks ago when I asked her the question, how do you feel about your life? She said, I feel like I'm beating a dead horse. Well, somebody could say, no, that's a belief. Well, no, she says it's a feeling. And I would say, yeah, it's a feeling. That's how she feels, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this idea of feeling is something that a lot of people either don't understand or don't recognize or don't appreciate. And that's what I was going to say to you about when I said, feel a certain way first, get the feeling there, and then think of the negative thing. And you said, oh yeah, that's kind of like NLP. They say move it over here, move it over there, move it over here.
Well, yeah, and I did
What I was
sidetrack
thinking,
Michael there. I went back later and saw it. I said that was totally wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it wasn't necessarily wrong, but it was like a different language. You were talking about a visual, right?
Well, I took the long way. You went
said,
straight.
Move it over there, move it over there. That's a visual thing, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's valid what you say. It's not necessarily wrong, but it's like you were speaking French and I was speaking German.
Well, I mean, I was trying to elicit an idea, not getting what you were saying, and basically, Michael went on he drifted back to what I was saying. I watched it again, and so he drifted back to what I was saying, which so I can think about it differently, and he thought about it differently, and he said, "Now I don't feel that feeling anymore."
Yeah, that's right.
And you said, you know what? That's close. You were too nice to get into, arguing with us about it. But you said, that's close, but you'd be quicker if you went to the feeling. And he said, yeah, I agree. And so we kind of left it there. But ultimately, it was the feeling you said could have been a lot faster because where we ended up.
Well, exactly.
We ended up in the feeling. But that's interesting because I wanted to ask you a question about that. When you say the feeling, and I'm in my mind, one of the things is saying the difference is the feeling is in the body. It's a
Yes.
tactile thing. So if you say feel happy, it's not, I didn't say think happy. You said feel
Right.
happy.
Right.
When you feel happy, your body goes into a blissful state, calm, ease, no fight or flight, but it's just, you know, perfect. It's high heaven. It's a higher state of being. When you say think happy, well, yeah, I can still think happy, but I can still be stressed in my body. It's not really the same thing. And what you're saying
Right.
is go to the feeling of happy, practice the feeling of happy, which is something I've never done. I've not practiced feelings in
Right.
anticipation to remap the neurology to know what feeling is. Now I can think happy. I
Yep.
can think happy thoughts are linking forward and looking at the good. Get it. I get it. Keep your mind doing that. Now, the body slowly starts to respond if you do that. But a better way to do it would be to practice happy and reroute it so that you just say, so let's switch to this feeling rather than this thought. So that's kind of an
Right.
interesting. I mean, I've been mapping my thoughts over time now. I've been saying where, daily I'll look at it and say, what do you, and I have little reminders that come in. What are you thinking about? What are you thinking about? Well, I'm thinking about how things aren't going to go right on this, or I'm thinking about I'm
Right.
going to be late for the meeting. I'm thinking about this, all these negatives. Stop doing that. Think about you're going to work hard and be on time. You're going to be, work hard at getting projects done. You're going to break them down to smaller tasks. You're going to make them like going to get your grocery, shopping list. It's not a big deal. We're going to go to the grocery store to shine your shoes. So those work technically, and they do lead to less stress. But an interesting thing is to do it in the sense, do it while happy, do it while feeling
Yeah.
happy.
Well, let me
You know
ask you
that
this. Yeah, let me
that's
ask you
interesting.
this
So,
question. You mentioned something a couple of weeks ago. We were talking, maybe it was last week. I'm not sure,
hmm
and about happy experiences or something like that. And you said
hmm
one of the things you said I remember was seeing my children be born.
you said again? It was too quiet.
We
I
were
couldn't hear you.
talking about happy experiences or something, and you mentioned just in passing, you mentioned something about yeah, like I remember seeing my children born, when they were born.
Oh, children born. Okay,
Yeah.
okay, I didn't catch
So
that.
if you go back there in your mind, you can do it right now. You can close your eyes if you like, or you can leave them open.
hmm
Go back to that time in that place. You're in the hospital, I assume. You're in the room there. Your wife
Uh-huh.
just giving birth, right?
Right.
So notice how you feel. Get right back in your body there. And notice how you
hmm
feel looking at your child for the first time. Can you feel it? Can you breathe it in? Can you sort of get a tactile, physical body sensation of that feeling?
I'm having a hard time getting there.
It's
I'm
hard.
close.
Yeah,
It's
exactly. It's
hard to get
hard.
to the exact feeling of the body,
It's
but
hard.
I can feel it. I can see it in my mind, but it's a little harder to
Exactly.
feel it. But
Exactly. Yeah. So I would say, go back to that time because I mean, this would be like a past successes list item, right? It's not
right,
necessarily a success. I mean, you didn't really do much, you know,
right,
to create that child. It just took a
right,
couple seconds, right?
right.
But nevertheless, I would put that on my past successes list too. And maybe I need another list of like a feeling list. You know, I
Uh-huh.
I think I probably have one in my workbook. But put that down as you can write it down, put it down, looking at my son for the first time. He was just born. He's a minute old, right?
Yeah.
And get into that time and that place and that body. Like get right back physically into that time and space as much as you can.
hmm
And make a list of words that come to mind that describe your feelings. And you might have words like I feel relieved, he's got 5 fingers and 5 toes, right?
Right.
um or I feel lucky, or I feel blessed. One of them might be feeling happy. right? I mean, happy is such a general word, I mean, there might be 20 or 30 different shades of happy, right?
Uh-huh.
Like I was talking to a woman the other day. I went to church a couple of weeks ago, and I was talking to this woman, and she had on like a complete rainbow of colors.
Mm-hmm.
She had like this multicolored blouse on, and she had these tights that were sort of, well, they were a certain shade. And so we were talking about something, and I mentioned, I'm not sure if I was talking about feelings or not at this time, because we just talked for a minute or two, right? And,
Right.
but she said something about pink, and I said, "Well, you're wearing pink, aren't you?" And she says, "No, I'm not." And I pointed to her tights, and I said, "Aren't they pink?" She said, "No, they're magenta." So I said, "Oh, well, they're pink to me. I mean, I would call that pink." And she says, "Well, pink, pink has more blue and yellow in it, or magenta is a combination of like blue and red and yellow or something." And
Right.
I said, "Oh, well, are you an artist?" And she says, "Yeah, I do some painting." So I said, "Well, there
Yeah.
you go." I
Yes.
said, "You know a lot more about color than I do, right?" I said,
Sure.
"To me, that's pink."
Yeah.
Well, well, that's actually a good example, right? Because for her, when she looked at her leotards that she was wearing, they were
Mm-hmm.
magenta. Magenta was a particular combination of, this, and this, green and
Right.
so much green, so much red, so much blue, so much yellow, whatever they might be. I have no idea. Well, to me, that's what feelings are like, right? So when you say happy, like, do you feel happy when you look at your newborn child? Well, you might not say happy. You might say, well, I feel proud. I feel relieved. I feel like a parent. I feel he's okay. Whatever. I'm happy that he's breathing.
Uh-huh.
You might not necessarily say I feel happy, but you could. But think about it. Try that for a week or two. Just play around with that one memory and see how many thoughts you can come up with that describe a feeling. Right?
Right.
It's certainly a positive experience, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think having access to these positive feelings, I think of it like I have a freeway to my negative feelings.
Yeah,
And I have a backside road to my good ones.
a footpath.
And so yeah, I got a footpath to my good ones.
That's
So I
right. For more information about this online community, to get your own copy of the book upon which this entire training series is based, either the ebook, the paperback, or the audiobook, go to mindtimeandpower.com, where you can also get a free copy of this Design Your Life workbook.